Some archaeological discoveries have to be seen to be believed. Sometimes you still won't believe your eyes even after you've seen them. What you're about to see in this video is going to test your understanding of history and perhaps even make you question some of your longest-held beliefs. They're mysterious discoveries that we still don't fully understand, but perhaps we'll improve our understanding of them by looking at them together. Let's go! If you're a fan of Star Wars, and let's face it, most of us have seen at least some of the movies, even if we're not big fans, you'll know what the Millennium Falcon looks like. It's Han Solo's spaceship, and it's the most iconic spaceship in the whole franchise. We suspect that the majority of you would be able to identify the outline of that ship anywhere. So, what are we to make of this image, allegedly taken from Google Earth? It comes from a video posted on YouTube that shows someone zooming in into a specific area of Egypt, getting closer and closer until the spaceship-like shape appears. To add to the mystery, that same part of Egypt is now blurred out if you attempt to zoom in on it. Is there something there that security services don't want us to see? Or is this nothing more than a hoax? Common sense tells us that it's more likely to be the latter, but there are still plenty of people who believe that there's something interesting in that blurred-out area, even if it doesn't turn out to be a spacecraft. What do you think? It's long puzzled archaeologists that so many of the Iron Age swords that are recovered from the ancient battlefields of Europe are bent when they're found. As of April 2021, they finally think they know why. A metal detectorist recently found one of the largest Iron Age hoards in German history at the site of an ancient hill fort. There are more than 150 weapons in the hoard, including 40 spears, but the bulk of the weapons are swords, and all of them are bent. There are too many of them clustered too close together for the placement to be accidental. Historians now think that the swords of the losing side were collected after a battle, bent during a ceremony to symbolically represent the defeat of the army that carried them and to symbolize the end of the battle. The cache of broken weapons is around 2,100 years old. There are still questions to be answered, though, because bent swords are also sometimes found in the graves of soldiers who were ceremonially buried by their own side with lavish grave goods. Perhaps the act of bending the sword merely meant it was never to be used again because its owner was deceased. It isn't unusual to find evidence that our ancient ancestors worshipped animal gods, but this next story isn't about your average animal god. In early 2021, archaeologists working at a site in North Peru came across this striking mural, created roughly 3,200 years ago. As you can see, it's a representation of a spider. Not only that, but the spider is carrying what appears to be a knife. While it's impossible to say for sure, historians think that the mural was most probably created by the Kupasnik people who lived here at around the right time to carry out the work. What we know about their culture isn't much, but we believe that they associated spiders with rain and fertility. It would make sense to worship a rain god here because of a nearby river. So long as the weather was favorable, the river would have supplied the people with all the food they would need. There's also some evidence at the site that the mural was once connected to a far larger temple, but the temple was destroyed when farmers moved into the area and seized the land approximately 200 years ago. So much of Egypt has been explored by archaeologists in the past 200 years that you might suspect we've already found everything there is to find. We haven't, though. In fact, we're not even close. In April 2021, a whole undiscovered pharaonic city in Luxor saw the light of day for the first time in 3,000 years. The old city has been almost perfectly preserved under the sand, with multiple mud brick houses carefully arranged in neat lines. The tools used to make the houses have also been found at the site, along with a range of exciting ancient Egyptian artifacts. Back when this city was built, King Amenhotep III would have sat on the throne. It was considered to be a golden era for the ancient kingdom. There have always been rumors that there was a city in the area, and many archaeological surveys of the past have come looking for it without success. It's hard to see how they missed it. It's a large settlement, and would likely have been one of the Pharaonic Empire's largest administrative centers. Egyptologists are already hailing this as the most important discovery in the country since Tutankhamun's tomb was found. It will be interesting to see whether tourists agree. A well-thought-out inscription on a piece of jewelry can make all the difference when you're giving a gift to a loved one. It's always nice to receive a ring, but it's even nicer to receive one that has something personal etched into its surface. We wonder what the recipient of this ring thought when they received it. The ring was found by a metal detectorist in Wales. It's already notable for the distinctive skull design on its face, which identifies it as a death's head ring. But the inscription makes it even more sinister. It's in Latin and says, "Memento mori." For those who don't speak the language, that translates into English as "remember death," or alternatively, "remember you must die." Dr. Mark Redknapp, who works for the National Museum of Wales, says the message might not have been intended to be as morbid as it seems to us. He points out that people didn't tend to live long lives back in the 16th century when the ring was made, so accepting that death was a part of life was important. He loves the piece and agreed to buy it from the finder to add to the museum's collection. It's a commonly held theory that all human life as we know it began in Africa. Here's some evidence to support that theory. In April 2021, an archaeological survey team working at the site of Wonderwork Cave in the Kalahari Desert of South Africa reported that they had found evidence of the earliest known cave occupation in human history. At the same time, they also claimed to have found evidence of the earliest deliberate use of fire and also what might be the first tools ever crafted by humans. In short, the cave contains historical treasures of almost unprecedented proportions. The team from the University of Toronto in Canada is confident that there were early humans living in this cave an incredible 2.6 million years ago. They've even been able to trace the evolution of tools, which began as sharp flakes and chopping blocks, and then became more sophisticated tools like hand axes around 1 million years ago. The evidence of fire is taken from burned bones, sediments, and tools, and is also around 1 million years old. Not only did our very ancient ancestors live in Wonderwork Cave, but they stayed there for a very long time. Next, we head to India, where a larger Mughal area water tank has been found by archaeologists during ongoing excavations at the site of Fatehpur Sikri. The tank dates back to the 16th century and once boasted a fountain at its center. It's more like a mini reservoir than a tank, with a depth of 3 feet and a length of 25 feet. There's evidence of a plaster floor at the bottom of the tank, with faint outlines of embellished patterns still visible in the lime. It's thought that the tank served a nearby cluster of shops that was discovered in 2019. The shops are all neatly arranged and of similar proportions, almost like a modern-day shopping center. Each of them has 2 stories, which is thought to have been an unusual design for shops of the era. If the purpose of the water tank was to sustain the shops, it probably failed. It seems that this entire complex was abandoned in 1585, mostly because of a shortage of water in the area. Perhaps they should have dug this water tank a little deeper. Going to watch gladiators do battle was the equivalent of going to watch your local sports team play for ancient Romans. They considered it a form of entertainment and even gambled on the outcomes of the contests, just as many people still do today. The Colosseum is the most famous former gladiatorial combat arena in the world, but a previously unknown arena was found in the hilly countryside of Mastora, Turkey, in March 2021. Most of the area is now covered with soil and vegetation, but the outline of the arena can still clearly be seen when you look at the region from above. Archaeologists estimate it to be around 1,800 years old. That dates it back to the time of the Severan dynasty. Around 20,000 people would have been able to gather in the seating area of the arena to watch the blood sports happening in its center. Waiting rooms for gladiators and so-called entertainment rooms for the most well-heeled of the spectators have also been identified. It's likely that this was the only such amphitheater in the region, so people likely came from miles around to enjoy the shows. How much can you tell about a person from their footprints? To find that out, perhaps we should look at Europe's oldest footprints. The fossilized prints were found on a beach in southern Spain in early 2021 and belong to Neanderthals. If the initial estimate of their age is correct, the impressions were made over 100,000 years ago. There are hundreds of prints at the site made by 36 individuals walking across the beach together. The footprints of the adults among the group are steady and constant, but there were also children in the group. Rather than being steady and consistent, the prints left behind by the children are erratic. They suggest that the children ran around, jumped, and kicked at the sand. In short, they behaved playfully in much the same way we'd expect modern children to behave on the beach. This highlights not only the fact that the people of the distant past were in many ways similar to the people of today, but also that Neanderthal children were every bit as playful and joyous as the children of Homo sapiens. The two species may not be as unalike as we once thought. Hallucinogens are banned almost everywhere in the world today, but our ancient ancestors loved them. Native Americans used plants with hallucinogenic properties to bring about trance-like states and experience visions. There weren't quite as many hallucinogenic plants to go around in Europe, but that doesn't seem to have stopped the ancient Europeans from getting in on the fun. During the 19th century, archaeologists discovered a surprisingly elaborately decorated set of caves in Spain that contained paintings made between 14 and 40,000 years ago. The caves are connected through very narrow passageways and are a long way from the light, so they're almost pitch black. At their deepest reaches, they're also low on oxygen. According to a study performed in April 2021, it was a combination of darkness and low oxygen levels that attracted these ancient people to them. The combination of near blindness and oxygen deprivation may have induced hallucinations in the people who traveled this far into the cave system. And those hallucinations are what they painted on the wall. There might have been a spiritual or religious reason for this practice, but it's just as possible that these ancient artists were simply having fun. The Shigir idol is a strange artifact for archaeologists and historians to study. It seems that every time someone studies it and tests it, they find that it's even older than the last person to test it thought it was. Back when it was found in 1890 in the peat bogs of the Ural Mountains in Russia, it was said to be 10,000 years old. A team of scientists scoffed at that idea in 2018 and tested it with the assumption that they'd find it was made much more recently. Instead, they proved it was 11,800 years old. They contacted some of their peers for a second opinion, and more tests were carried out. The results of those tests became known in 2020. This time, they suggested that the sculpture was an incredible 12,100 years old. Nobody knows the true origin of the statue. It features depictions of 7 different three-dimensional human faces and is covered in hieroglyphs that nobody's ever been able to translate. It stands more than 7 feet tall and is made from wood that's been carefully chiseled and then polished. It's an enigma, and a very ancient one at that. If only we could translate those hieroglyphs. Some discoveries are so good that they're worth making twice, or at least that appears to be the attitude of a museum in France. This is the Saint-Belec slab, and it's thought to be the oldest three-dimensional map in the world. Its estimated age is 4,100 years old. We'd like to know more about its origins than we do, but unfortunately, we haven't had as long to study it as we should have. The slab was originally found in 1900, but due to a filing and labeling error, it wasn't stored properly, and then somehow found its way into the cellar of a castle, where it was eventually found again in 2014. The team of experts who've studied it since then clearly think it's of more value than their predecessors. Their work has demonstrated that the carvings on the surface of the rock are very similar to the topography of the land around the river Odette, the place where it was first found. If we accept that the artifact is a map, we should probably assume that it represents the full extent of the territory of an ancient fiefdom. Who controlled and lived within this territory is a question we don't have an answer to just yet. Subscribe now and turn on the bell so you don't miss a thing. Fascinating discoveries await you in every video. Thanks for your support. See you soon.